Yo, what's up, guys? Gonna do a little bit of a betting breakdown, quick predictions video for this UFC Sao Paulo card tomorrow. So hit the like button. I already got quite a few bets for this card. So if you want to check out some of my bets, go to patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru. And made some money off ACA earlier today. Hit a plus 300 underdog. So feeling pretty good about some of the reads that I've been having recently. And hopefully we could make some money tomorrow as well. But let's get into it here. First fight that we're going to talk about, Kyle Fernandez versus Mark Jacasey. Mark Jacasey has took a lot of money at this point. He originally was minus 210, but then he came all the way down, like where it was like even money line. Now he's back at minus 190. I don't know if I would bet him at that point, but I wasn't big on Fernandez. I didn't like his cardio. So personally, I just feel like Jacasey, being the more experienced fighter, is going to be able to use his hands and use his wrestling to probably get the win, avoid the submission, avoid the early kick knockout from Fernandez. So that's what I would go with, but don't really like the props. Don't really like either money line at this point. So it's kind of where I'm at with that fight. And then Eduarda Mora, she's taking on Montserrat Ruiz, and she was my most confident pick earlier this week on my betting video or on my prediction video. But I still am confident in her. It is a little bit less confident just because she did miss weight today, which didn't really like to see. But she was already significantly bigger, in my opinion, than Ruiz before that. Now she's going to have an even bigger size advantage. And with Montserrat Ruiz, we know she's kind of a one-track fighter where she's tough. She could take some damage on the feet, but not necessarily dangerous there. And then she wants to get that head and arm throw, control on top, and win through that. But when she's faced superior grappler, she struggled, and she's been knocked out before. And I feel like Mara, she's with Jalton Almeida in that group, but she has really good grappling. I think she can easily out-grapple Ruiz more than likely and get the finish. She's a lot bigger. I don't know about I do think she's going to get the finish. I don't know about easy just because Ruiz is tough. We saw her survive some tough positions in her last fight, but if I'm looking at this fight, I would look at the under 2.5 rounds, minus 165. Mora wins inside the distance is at the same price. So, I don't know. I would go with more inside the distance at that point just because it gives you a little bit more time. Maybe she finishes late at the end of the fight because I do think it's going to be her that wins inside the distance if it does happen. But, yeah, that's kind of what I would look at on that for that fight. Don't necessarily have a clean read if it'll be a submission or TKO. I'm going to say it's a submission, but plus 160, it's not appealing enough to not just take the minus 165. So I think that would probably be the way to go for that. And this next one, Angela Hill versus Denise Gomes. Like I said earlier in the week, a lot of people on both sides of this fight. And Gomes, I feel like, has gotten a little bit more play recently. She's become a little bit of a bigger favorite here at minus 150 on Bet Online. I think she should maybe still even be a little bit bigger favorite, maybe like minus 180. I know people are on Hill, but I just feel like on the feet, I think Gomes with her forward pressure is going to give Hill a lot of trouble. I think there's going to be a power disparity, and I don't see Hill having the wrestling to kind of out-wrestle Gomes. I think Gomes' grappling is going to always be improving. She's a really young girl, whereas Hill's kind of a finished product, and Hill just took a lot of damage her last fight, ate a lot of significant strikes, got dropped. So I think Gomes would be a decent bet. And then when you look at Gomes to win in round 1 plus 500, I don't know. I mean, I know that's what she's been doing recently, but it's not that much of a better price than her to win by KO TKO at plus 315. So that would be probably the safer play for her to win by KO TKO at plus 315 because it could happen in the second round. But I'm going to say Gomes gets the win, and those are probably the two best bets off that card or off that fight. So that's what I would kind of say there. With Vitor Petrino versus Bukauskas, I mean, maybe Petrino by submission. I don't know. The price on that is plus 375. I don't really like this fight. I don't really trust either guy too much. I don't have, a high ceiling. Or not necessarily that. I think Petrino could be good, but just right now I don't think either guy's that trustworthy. Kind of think it's like a dog or pass on the money line. But I'm going to be picking Petrino. I think he can get the knockout or the submission win. So it's it's kind of what I would think. But this fight, honestly, I don't really want to have a bet on this fight anywhere. With Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos versus Rinat Fakhretdinov, I do feel like Fakhretdinov looked kind of weary on this, or not Fakhretdinov. Zaleski looked a little bit weary on the scales. I didn't think he looked like he had the best weight cut, but personally, I still think it's a dog or pass just because Fakhretdinov hasn't proven enough to me to be this big of a favorite over a established UFC veteran with a great track record. But Zaleski's older. Fakhretdinov has won all his UFC fights pretty much with ease, and if he can get his grappling game going, I think he can beat almost anyone in the division. So Zaleski, he did beat Nurmagomedov in his last fight, and I do think he's live to potentially get the upset, but ultimately I am going to go with Fakhretdinov. So it's kind of one of those fights with a dog or pass, but I'm not too interested in the dog. Personally, I know some people are taking some shots on Zaleski, but him to win inside the distance plus 650, I think that's a decent bet. But I feel like Fakhretdinov's probably going to win via decision. So plus 105 for that. I don't think for the fight to go to decision, I don't think is a bad play. And for Fakhretdinov to win via decision plus 185, I also don't think that's a bad bet. I don't see him submitting a guy like Zaleski, who's a jiu-jitsu black belt, really tough guy. And I think it would be pretty unlikely that he knocks him out. I think Zaleski has the edge on the feet. So I feel like fight goes the distance, the decision for Fakhretdinov, or if you're on the Zaleski side, maybe him to win inside the distance are probably what I would say there. But for this next fight, we got Elvis Brenner versus Kenan Krzyzewski. Just did a breakdown for this fight in a separate video. It was a short notice fight, so if you haven't seen that, check it out. But lean in pretty heavily towards Brenner in this one. I feel like he's a lot better on the feet. I think Krzyzewski, he's decent Muay Thai, long guy, but makes a lot of defensive mistakes, gets tired, drops his hands, and I think Elvis Brenner could eventually take advantage of that. So I think Brenner by KO at plus 550 is a pretty good bet, great price tag there. And then I think Brenner as well to win maybe in the second or third round, plus 500, plus 800. I think those plays are also there, and I think the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 230 is also a good bet there. So for this fight, I think there's several plays that could go and could work. I feel like Krzyzewski is going to end up getting knocked out or finished by Brenner some way or another. I know he has a good jiu-jitsu background, so leaning more towards a KO. He has been knocked out cold before, so that's why I would lean towards Elvis Brenner and those inside the distance props and the fight not to go to decision there. So the next one, we got Rodolfo Vieira versus Armen Petrosyan. And this is an interesting fight, but I do lean towards Petrosyan. I think at minus 103, even if you can get him all the way up to like minus 130, I think he's a decent bet there. As long as Vieira can't get constant takedowns for 3 rounds, which I think is going to be a little bit difficult with the movement and kind of distance control, Petrosyan, the speed, then I think Petrosyan will end up kind of putting the damage on and making Vieira a little bit hesitant, kind of get into a striking defensive shell, and I think it'll be a decision win for Petrosyan. So if you look at Petrosyan to win via decision, plus 265, it used to be at a way better price, which at that price I think it would have been a great bet. Even at plus 265, I think it's a decent play, but I'm leaning towards Petrosyan in that one, and I think he's going to get it done via decision. So Petrosyan, for me, would be the pick there. This next fighter here, Kyle Brala versus Abus Magomedov. Like I said on my original video, don't really have a great read on this fight just because a lot of people, I think they're shitting on Abus really hard because of his last fight with Strickland. But it was short notice, it was weird circumstances, and I don't necessarily know if the same thing is going to go down in this fight with more prep time and everything like that. I feel like Magomedov is the better striker, and Brala is obviously an elite grappler. He has great double leg, good cardio, and Magomedov gassed in his last fight, and Brala is good enough on the feet where it's not just going to be easy knockout or domination for Magomedov. So I feel like what we've seen now recently, you got to go with Brala just because of Magomedov. All his wins are real quick, and he got tired in the one recent fight that we saw him go long. So I guess Kyle's second round, third round if you're leaning more towards the brawl side and you're confident there. But for me, I just don't have a lot of confidence because I do feel like Abus Magomedov maybe has a little bit more to show that he hasn't shown yet there. But Rodrigo Nascimento versus Dontel Mays, rematch of a fight here. I think, the under 1.5 rounds is a decent bet at plus 155. Fight inside the distance at minus 160. I mean, I feel like with Dontel Mays, we kind of know the blueprint with him now. He's good when he can have a guy that wants to stay at range with him. He could outstrike him and use his speed. When he can outgrapple you, he could take you down and beat you up. But he doesn't have a lot of power. He doesn't have a lot of finishing upside. And when guys have nice tight guards, they could pressure forward, get in his face. Doesn't have good defense. He eventually can get taken down and submitted, and that's what we saw from Nascimento. I know Mays has survived a couple fights, went the distance against Sakai, but Sakai doesn't really have a submission threat, and then he did knock out Arlovsky, but Arlovsky's a guy that wants to stay at range and play that range kind of fight, and it was a better matchup for Mays. So ultimately, I think Nascimento is going to get this one done inside the distance. So the under 1.5 rounds, fight ends inside the distance. Nascimento wins inside the distance. I think those are playable lines there. And this next fight, Gabriel Bonfim versus Dalby. This point, this line to me is kind of ridiculous. I think Dalby is a good play here. I mean, Bonfim's gotten all really quick finishes. And if he doesn't get that quick finish against Dalby, who's never been finished in his career, I think he could play out a lot more competitive than this line indicates, certainly. So I think it's a dog or pass. I did pick Bonfim to win, and I do think the fight goes the distance at plus 215, over 2.5 plus 180. If you are confident on either side winning a decision, I mean, I think all those are good bets because, man, Dalby's proven that the guy's extremely difficult to finish. He's not just going to go out there and get destroyed early. So, man, I think it's a lot closer fight than that line indicates, even though I'm leaning towards Bonfim. And I think it's going to go the distance, and I think the over and the fight goes to decision are pretty good bets there. And the main event, Jailton Almeida versus Derek Lewis. I mean, this is another one where I think it's another dog or pass type of fight. I mean, you can't tell me Derek Lewis doesn't have a chance to win, especially at plus 400. So Almeida obviously is the favorite. I'm picking him. I think he's probably going to get it done inside the distance in the first round. But it's got to be a dog or pass for me in this fight just because of the line. Derek Lewis has the most knockouts in the history of the heavyweight division. He's beaten grapplers. He's beaten elite wrestlers. And Almeida's kind of new on the scene. So definitely Derek Lewis for me or pass. But the prices are kind of whack, man. I mean, under 1.5 rounds, minus 345. No value there. I mean, the fight ends inside the distance at minus 3,000. It's one of the biggest lines I've ever seen for a fight ends inside the distance. But, yeah, I mean, maybe the fight starts round 2, plus 170. It could be a decent bet, honestly. Yeah, I feel like Almeida by submission, minus 180. If you're very confident Almeida going in there and smoking him, then that's probably a pretty good bet. Yeah, that's the full card kind of betting breakdown for this UFC Almeida versus Lewis card. If you want access to my full bets, if you want access to my bets earlier where you can beat the closing line like certain fights, like I do have a bet on Mark Jacasey at I believe minus 130, and now he's minus 190, and I got a couple other bets where I got a lot of closing line values. So it's always good to be on Patreon and try to make yourself some money. Like I said, we won some money earlier today. But thanks for watching this video, guys. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. And let's try to make some money tomorrow watching this UFC Sao Paulo card.